On January 22, 1879, approximately 150 British soldiers successfully defended a remote mission station against an attacking force of over 4,000 Zulu warriors. The mathematical impossibility of this outcome becomes clear when examining the tactical situation, available resources, and combat effectiveness ratios that should have determined the battle's conclusion. The British garrison consisted primarily of sick and wounded soldiers recovering at the mission hospital, along with a small contingent of regular troops. They possessed standard single-shot Martini Henry rifles with limited ammunition supplies, basic medical supplies, and hastily constructed defensive positions made from mealie bags and biscuit boxes. The Zulu force represented seasoned warriors armed with traditional weapons, but possessing intimate knowledge of local terrain and proven tactical expertise. Contemporary military analysis demonstrates that defending forces require significant advantages in fortification, ammunition, and defensive positioning to successfully repel attacking forces with numerical superiority exceeding 25-1. The Rorke's drift defenders possessed none of these critical advantages. Their improvised fortifications wouldn't have stopped determined infantry assault. Their ammunition supplies should have been exhausted within hours of sustained combat. Their defensive positions offered minimal tactical benefit against coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Yet the battle unfolded in defiance of every military principle governing combat effectiveness and battlefield dynamics. The Zulu warriors, who had demonstrated exceptional tactical competence in previous engagements, somehow failed to coordinate their overwhelming numerical advantage into decisive assault. Their attacks became piecemeal and disorganized despite having commanders present who had successfully executed complex battle plans in earlier conflicts. Most impossibly, the British ammunition supplies lasted throughout the entire engagement, despite calculations showing they should have been depleted before the battle reached its midpoint. Soldiers reported firing continuously for hours without running out of cart postridges, though. Battle inventory revealed ammunition expenditure that matched expected consumption rates for much shorter engagements. The Antikythera mechanism discovery in 1901 revealed technological sophistication that couldn't have existed in ancient Greece, yet radiocarbon dating and archaeological context confirm its authentic antiquity. This bronze device demonstrates mechanical engineering principles and astronomical calculation capabilities that predated their supposed development by over a millennium. The mechanism incorporates differential gearing systems that weren't rediscovered until Renaissance clockmaking. Its astronomical calculations require mathematical knowledge that ancient Greek science hadn't developed. Most puzzling, the device predicts celestial events with accuracy that demands understanding of planetary mechanics not achieved until Copernican astronomy revolutionized our comprehension of solar system dynamics. Archaeological analysis confirms the mechanism was manufactured around 100 BCE, using techniques available to ancient craftsmen. Bronze composition matches period metallurgy. Construction methods show tool marks consistent with ancient manufacturing. Yet the knowledge required to design and calibrate such a device shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years. The mathematical precision embedded within the mechanism's gear ratios demonstrates understanding of complex astronomical cycles, eclipse prediction algorithms, and planetary motion calculations. These concepts required centuries of systematic observation, mathematical development, and theoretical framework construction that historical records don't document for ancient Greek civilization. Modern reconstruction attempts using contemporary machining techniques have struggled to replicate the mechanism's precision and functionality. The original demonstrates manufacturing accuracy that challenges current mechanical engineering capabilities, suggesting ancient craftsmen possessed skills and knowledge that exceeded their supposed technological limitations by extraordinary margins. The Tunguska event of June 30, 1908, flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest, with an explosion equivalent to 15 megatons of TNT, yet left no impact crater and produced no radioactive contamination that would indicate nuclear detonation. The devastation pattern defies explanation through any known natural phenomenon or human technology available in 1908. Eyewitness accounts describe a massive fireball streaking across the sky, followed by an explosion that knocked people unconscious hundreds of kilometers away. The blast wave circled the Earth twice and was detected by seismic stations worldwide. Atmospheric disturbances caused unusual twilight effects visible across Europe and Asia for weeks afterward. Scientific expeditions to the blast site found trees flattened in a radial pattern extending outward from a central point, but discovered no impact crater that would indicate meteor or asteroid collision. The explosion occurred at altitude rather than ground level, suggesting aerial detonation of unknown origin. No meteorite fragments were recovered despite extensive searches across the affected area. The energy release calculated from forest damage patterns and seismic recordings exceeds anything possible from chemical explosives available in 1908. Nuclear weapons didn't exist for another 37 years, yet the explosion characteristics match nuclear detonation effects while lacking the radioactive signature that would confirm atomic cause. Atmospheric analysis revealed unusual magnetic disturbances and electromagnetic anomalies that persisted for months after the event. These effects suggest interaction with forces or technologies that shouldn't have been possible given early 20th century scientific understanding and technological capabilities. The Peary-Rice map of 1513 accurately depicts Antarctic coastlines that weren't officially discovered until 1820, showing geographical features that remained hidden beneath ice sheets for centuries. The map's precision exceeds what should have been possible using 16th century navigation and cartographic techniques, yet its authenticity is confirmed through historical documentation and contemporary accounts. Admiral Peary-Rice compiled his world map using source materials that included charts from Christopher Columbus, Portuguese navigational records, and what he described as ancient maps of unknown origin. The resulting compilation shows South American coastlines with remarkable accuracy and includes detailed depictions of Antarctica's northern coast drawn with precision that matches modern satellite imagery. The Antarctic portion of the map presents geographical features that weren't visible when the map was created because they lay beneath ice formations. Modern glaciological research confirms that the coastline details shown on the Peary-Rice map match the actual land features beneath Antarctica's ice sheet, information that wasn't available to the 16th century cartographers through any known exploration or surveying methods. Navigation techniques available in 1513 couldn't have produced the longitudinal accuracy demonstrated in the map. Determining precise longitude required chronometric calculations that weren't developed until the 18th century invention of accurate maritime timepieces. Yet the Peary-Rice map shows longitudinal measurements that match modern calculations within margins of error that approach contemporary cartographic standards. The source materials Peary-Rice claimed to have used for his Antarctic depictions have never been identified in historical records. No documented expeditions had explored Antarctic regions when the map was compiled. The geographical knowledge embedded in the map suggests access to surveying information that predated official Antarctic discovery by over 3 centuries, raising questions about the true extent of early exploration and mapping achievements. These historical impossibilities share common characteristics that distinguish them from simple mysteries or unknown phenomena. They represent documented events that violate the logical frameworks governing technological development, military capability, and geographical knowledge. Each defies explanation through conventional historical analysis, while remaining authenticated through multiple independent sources and physical evidence that confirms their reality. The dancing plague of 1518 represents one of history's most bizarre mass psychological phenomena that medical science still cannot adequately explain. In July 1518, approximately 400 residents of Strasbourg began dancing uncontrollably for days without rest, with many reportedly dancing themselves to death. The event was documented by multiple contemporary sources including city records, medical accounts, and eyewitness testimonies. Yet the underlying cause defies rational explanation through any known psychological or physiological mechanism. The outbreak began when a woman named Frau Trophea started dancing frantically in the streets of Strasbourg. Within days, dozens of other residents joined her in compulsive dancing that continued day and night without pause. The afflicted individuals appeared unable to stop their movements despite obvious physical exhaustion, dehydration, and increasingly severe medical distress. Local authorities initially treated the phenomenon as a medical condition, consulting physicians who diagnosed the outbreak as hot blood, requiring more dancing to cure. The city government constructed a wooden stage and hired professional musicians, believing that organized dancing would help the afflicted work the condition out of their systems. This intervention only intensified the outbreak, with more residents joining the compulsive dancing and existing cases becoming more severe. Contemporary medical records describe dancers who continued their movements for weeks, exhibiting superhuman endurance that exceeded normal human physical limitations. Witnesses reported seeing individuals dance continuously for 7 days without food, water, or sleep, maintaining rhythmic movement patterns that should have resulted in complete physical collapse within hours. The physiological impossibility of sustained dancing without rest challenges basic understanding of human metabolism, muscle function, and neurological control. Medical analysis demonstrates that continuous physical exertion of the intensity described would result in fatal dehydration, cardiac arrest, or complete muscle failure within 24 to 48 hours. Yet, documented cases describe individuals maintaining coordinated dance movements for periods exceeding a week. Most puzzling was the apparent contagious nature of the dancing compulsion. Observers who watched the dancers frequently became afflicted themselves, suggesting transmission through visual observation rather than physical contact or environmental exposure. This pattern of psychological contagion doesn't match known mechanisms of disease transmission or mass hysteria development. The outbreak ended as suddenly as it began, with afflicted individuals gradually returning to normal behavior after weeks of compulsive dancing. No medical intervention proved effective in stopping the condition, and recovery appeared to occur spontaneously without treatment. The sudden cessation across hundreds of cases simultaneously defies explanation through conventional medical understanding of psychological disorders or physical ailments. The Great Emu War of 1932 saw the Australian military deploy machine guns, artillery, and coordinated tactical operations against approximately 20,000 emus that were damaging wheat crops in Western Australia. Despite overwhelming technological advantages and professional military leadership, the operation failed catastrophically, with the bird population remaining largely intact while military resources were exhausted without achieving strategic objectives. Major Gwynedd Purves, Wyn Aubrey Meredith, led the military expedition equipped with Lewis machine guns, abundant ammunition supplies, and motorized transport vehicles designed to outmaneuver the emu flocks. The tactical plan involved coordinated sweeps across agricultural areas where the birds concentrated, utilizing superior firepower and mobility to eliminate the pest population efficiently. The emus demonstrated tactical awareness that confounded military strategists. The birds organized into smaller groups when attacked, making coordinated fire less effective. They exhibited apparent understanding of machine gun range limitations maintaining distances that minimized casualty rates while continuing their crop destruction activities. Most impossibly, the emus seemed to anticipate military movements, relocating before sweep operations reached their positions. Combat reports describe engagement scenarios where machine gun fire produced minimal casualties, despite accurate targeting and sustained bombardment. The birds appeared to possess almost supernatural ability to avoid direct hits, moving in patterns that suggested coordination and tactical intelligence far exceeding expected animal behavior. Soldiers reported shooting directly into emu formations, only to find minimal evidence of successful hits. The operation's failure rate defied statistical probability given the weapon's effectiveness and target density. Military analysis shows that Lewis machine guns firing into concentrated groups of large, slow-moving targets should have achieved casualty rates approaching 80%. Actual results showed effectiveness rates below 10%, suggesting factors beyond conventional ballistics and targeting accuracy. After weeks of intensive military operations, the EMU population showed no significant reduction, while ammunition supplies were exhausted, and equipment maintenance costs exceeded the economic value of crop protection. The military withdrawal represented one of the few documented cases where modern armed forces were defeated by non-human opponents, using no technology or organized resistance strategies. The Carrington event of September 1859 produced the most powerful geomagnetic storm in recorded history, causing telegraph systems worldwide to fail while simultaneously allowing some telegraph operators to disconnect their power sources and continue transmitting messages using only the electrical energy generated by the geomagnetic disturbance itself. This phenomenon violated understanding of electromagnetic physics and demonstrated electrical effects that shouldn't have been possible given 19th century technology and scientific knowledge. Telegraph networks across North America and Europe experienced complete system failures as electromagnetic pulses overloaded circuits and ignited telegraph paper in offices worldwide. The magnetic disturbance was so intense that compass needles spun wildly, and aurora displays were visible as far south as the Caribbean, indicating geomagnetic field disruption of extraordinary magnitude. Yet numerous telegraph operators discovered they could continue transmitting messages after disconnecting their stations from battery power sources. The geomagnetic storm generated sufficient electrical current in telegraph wires to power communication systems independently, creating a global communications network operating on natural electromagnetic energy alone. The technical impossibility of this phenomenon challenged fundamental understanding of electrical systems and electromagnetic field interactions. Telegraph technology required precisely controlled electrical current delivered through battery systems. Natural electromagnetic fluctuations shouldn't have provided stable enough power to maintain coherent signal transmission across continental distances. Documented telegraph conversations during the Carrington event show operators discussing the phenomenon while their equipment operated without artificial power sources. Messages were transmitted with clarity and consistency that matched normal operational conditions, suggesting the natural electromagnetic field provided superior electrical stability compared to conventional battery systems. Scientific analysis of the event reveals electromagnetic field strengths that exceeded theoretical maximums for sustainable geomagnetic activity. The energy levels recorded should have caused permanent damage to Earth's magnetic field and atmospheric systems. Yet the disturbance subsided without lasting environmental effects while temporarily creating electrical phenomena that transcended contemporary technological limitations. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony between 1587 and 1590 eliminated an entire English settlement of over 100 people without leaving physical evidence of violence, disease, or forced relocation. The colonists vanished completely, leaving behind only the cryptic word Croatoan carved into a wooden post and personal belongings arranged as if the residents had planned to return momentarily. Governor John White returned from England in 1590 to find the settlement abandoned with houses dismantled in organized fashion rather than destroyed by conflict or disaster. Personal possessions remained undisturbed in arrangements suggesting temporary departure rather than hasty evacuation. The absence of human remains, signs of struggle, or evidence of epidemic disease ruled out the most common explanations for colonial settlement failure. Archaeological investigations have failed to locate any trace of the missing colonists, despite extensive searches across the region where they might have relocated. No European artifacts, burial sites, or cultural evidence has been discovered that would indicate where over 100 people could have gone. The complete absence of physical traces defies explanation, given the material culture and survival requirements of the 16th century colonial settlements. The carved message Croatoan referred to nearby Hatteras Island, but investigations there revealed no evidence of European settlement or integration with local Native American populations. Indigenous communities in the region had no oral traditions or cultural memories of absorbing large numbers of English colonists, despite maintaining detailed historical accounts of other European contacts. Most puzzling was the organized nature of the abandonment. Houses were carefully dismantled rather than destroyed, suggesting planned departure rather than emergency evacuation. Yet no historical records document any arrangement for colonial relocation, and supply ships from England found no forwarding information or communication explaining the settlement's status. The logistical impossibility of moving over 100 people, including women and children, across unfamiliar wilderness without leaving traces challenges understanding of colonial capabilities and survival requirements. The complete disappearance suggests coordination and resources that exceeded what the isolated settlement possessed, while the absence of any destination or evidence of arrival anywhere else renders the entire event inexplicable through conventional historical analysis. The phantom time hypothesis suggests that approximately 297 years of European history between 614 and 911 CE never actually occurred, with the entire period being a fabrication created by Holy Roman Emperor Otto III and Pope Sylvester II to legitimize their rule by placing themselves at the year 1000 CE. This theory, while controversial, points to genuine historical anomalies that challenge the accepted chronology of the early medieval period. Archaeological evidence from this supposed 297-year period shows unusual gaps and inconsistencies that don't align with expected patterns of continuous cultural development. Building techniques, artistic styles, and technological innovations that should demonstrate gradual evolution instead show abrupt changes that suggest missing developmental stages. Construction projects allegedly spanning centuries show architectural elements that appear to have been completed within much shorter time frames. Carbon dating results from artifacts attributed to the phantom time period frequently produce dates that don't match their assigned historical placement. Organic materials consistently date earlier or later than their supposed chronological context, creating systematic discrepancies that exceed normal margin of error ranges. These dating anomalies occur with sufficient frequency to suggest fundamental problems with the established timeline rather than isolated measurement errors. Astronomical records from the period show calculations and observations that don't align with known celestial events. Eclipse predictions and planetary position calculations attributed to early medieval astronomers demonstrate mathematical accuracy that requires observational data spanning longer periods than the supposed historical timeline allows. The astronomical knowledge embedded in these records suggests either access to much older source materials or telescopic observation capabilities that didn't officially exist until centuries later. Documentary evidence from the phantom time period relies heavily on sources that were copied and recopied during later periods, with original manuscripts rarely surviving from the alleged time frame. Charter documents, royal decrees, and religious texts show linguistic and stylistic characteristics that match later historical periods rather than the developmental stage that language should have reached during the supposed era of their creation. The Voynich manuscript represents one of history's most enigmatic documents, written in an unknown script using an unidentified language that has resisted all attempts at translation. Despite centuries of analysis dating places, the contents suggest knowledge and breakers. Carbon, by the world's leading lingid botanical illustrationists, cryptographers, and code the early 15th century, yet it's of plants that don't match any known species in Earth's flora manuscript's creation in. The drawings show consistent concepts that wouldn't be developed until much later periods. The manuscript contains detailed artistic style and biological accuracy that suggests direct observation rather than imaginative creation. Yet the depicted plants display characteristics that don't exist in any documented botanical specimens. The illustrations include root systems, flowering patterns, and anatomical details that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of plant biology. Astronomical sections of the manuscript contain star charts and celestial diagrams that incorporate mathematical relationships and cosmic mapping techniques that predated their supposed development by centuries. The astronomical knowledge demonstrates understanding of planetary mechanics, stellar distances, and gravitational effects that weren't officially discovered until the scientific revolution transformed human comprehension of celestial physics. Pharmaceutical sections describe preparation methods for medicines and treatments using processes that match modern biochemical extraction techniques. The illustrated procedures show distillation equipment, chemical processing methods, and pharmaceutical preparation techniques that weren't developed until industrial chemistry advanced human understanding of molecular interactions and medicinal compound isolation. A statistical analysis of the manuscript's language reveals consistent grammatical patterns and vocabulary structures that suggest a genuine linguistic system rather than elaborate hoax or cipher. The text follows mathematical distribution patterns that match natural languages while maintaining internal consistency across hundreds of pages of continuous writing. This linguistic complexity exceeds what could be achieved through random generation or simple substitution codes. The manuscript's writing system incorporates approximately 240 unique characters that combine in patterns suggesting syllabic or logographic structure, similar to complex Asian writing systems. The character frequency distributions and positional variations demonstrate linguistic sophistication that would require years of systematic development to create artificially, yet no historical record documents the existence of such a writing system in medieval Europe. The bone wars of the late 19th century saw paleontologists Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope engage in a bitter scientific rivalry that involved espionage, sabotage, and deliberate destruction of fossil sites to prevent competitors from making discoveries. This conflict between respected scientists violated every principle of academic cooperation and scientific methodology, yet produced some of the most significant paleontological discoveries in American history. The rivalry began as legitimate scientific competition but escalated into open warfare that included hiring armed guards to protect excavation sites, bribing workers to provide intelligence about competitor activities, and deliberately dynamiting fossil deposits to prevent rivals from accessing specimens. Both scientists possessed substantial financial resources and used them to fund increasingly elaborate schemes designed to undermine each other's research efforts. Marsh and Cope employed teams of fossil hunters who operated more like military reconnaissance units than scientific expeditions. These groups engaged in surveillance activities, territorial disputes over excavation rights, and systematic campaigns to discredit opposing discoveries through publication of false or misleading research papers. The scientific journals of the period became battlegrounds for personal attacks disguised as academic criticism. The destruction caused by this rivalry eliminated irreplaceable paleontological evidence that would have advanced understanding of prehistoric life. Entire fossil beds were rendered inaccessible through deliberate sabotage, and countless specimens were lost to competitive vandalism rather than preserved for scientific study. The waste of scientific resources and destruction of evidence violated fundamental principles of research methodology and academic ethics. Yet, this period of scientific misconduct paradoxically produced more significant dinosaur discoveries than any comparable timeframe in paleontological history. The competitive pressure drove both researchers to accelerate their discovery efforts and expand their geographical searches, resulting in the identification of numerous new species and the establishment of foundational knowledge about prehistoric ecosystems. The Battle of Los Angeles on February 25, 1942, saw American military forces fire over 1,400 anti-aircraft shells at unidentified flying objects over Los Angeles, yet achieved no confirmed hits despite hours of sustained bombardment. The incident occurred during World War II, when invasion fears ran high, but the target characteristics and engagement results defied explanation through conventional military analysis. Air raid sirens sounded across Los Angeles as radar operators detected multiple unidentified aircraft approaching the coastline. Military commanders ordered a complete blackout and deployed anti-aircraft batteries that maintained continuous fire for several hours. Searchlights illuminated objects in the sky that appeared to move in patterns inconsistent with known aircraft performance capabilities. Eyewitness accounts describe objects that maintained position despite direct artillery hits, moved at speeds that exceeded contemporary aircraft capabilities, and demonstrated flight patterns that defied aerodynamic principles governing conventional aviation technology. Military personnel reported targeting objects that appeared solid and substantial, yet showed no signs of damage from explosive shells that should have destroyed any aircraft of the period. The objects displayed luminous characteristics that enhanced their visibility, while simultaneously making accurate targeting extremely difficult. Artillery crews reported shooting directly illuminated targets without achieving hits that produced debris, explosion evidence, or crash sites that would confirm successful engagement. The sustained bombardment produced no physical evidence of destroyed aircraft or enemy casualties. Official military reports acknowledged firing over 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition, but couldn't explain the complete absence of confirmed hits or enemy aircraft debris. The engagement characteristics violated basic principles of artillery effectiveness and target engagement that governed military doctrine and tactical training. No known aircraft possessed the performance capabilities necessary to avoid hits during sustained bombardment from multiple battery positions. The incident was initially attributed to war hysteria and mistaken identification of weather balloons or conventional aircraft. Yet, meteorological records show no balloon launches during the engagement period, and flight logs confirm no friendly aircraft operated in the area during the bombardment. The object's flight characteristics and invulnerability to direct hits remain unexplained through conventional military or technological analysis. These historical impossibilities demonstrate that documented events occasionally unfold according to principles that contradict established understanding of cause and effect, technological capability, and logical progression. Each represents authentic occurrences that challenge fundamental assumptions about how historical events should develop based on available resources, knowledge, and circumstances. The documentation confirms these events happened exactly as described, yet rational analysis cannot explain how such outcomes were possible given the constraints and limitations that should have determined different results. The London beer flood of 1814 created one of history's most absurd disasters, when a massive vat containing over 388,000 gallons of beer burst at the Moose and Company Brewery, unleashing a tsunami of porter that swept through the streets of St. Giles with devastating force. The wave of beer reached heights of 15 feet, demolished buildings, and killed 8 people in what should have been impossible given the physics of liquid flow and structural engineering principles governing brewery construction. The Moose Brewery had constructed their fermentation vats using standard industrial techniques that should have provided adequate structural integrity for containing pressurized liquids. The burst vat was one of several massive containers designed to hold hundreds of thousands of gallons, yet the catastrophic failure occurred without warning signs or gradual deterioration that would typically precede such dramatic structural collapse. Contemporary engineering analysis demonstrates that the volume of liquid released and the velocity it achieved violate basic principles of fluid dynamics and gravitational flow. The beer wave maintained destructive force across distances that exceed what should be possible, given the initial height differential and surface friction encountered as the liquid spread through urban streets. The sustained momentum defied calculations governing liquid dispersal patterns. Most puzzling was the wave's selective destructive power. Some buildings directly in the flood path remained intact, while structures further away suffered complete collapse. The liquid flow pattern showed characteristics that suggested the beer maintained coherent wave formation rather than dispersing randomly as fluid dynamics principles predict. This selective destruction pattern has never been adequately explained through conventional hydraulic engineering analysis. The WOW signal detected on August 15, 1977, represents the strongest evidence of potential extraterrestrial communication ever recorded, yet its characteristics defy explanation through any known natural astronomical phenomenon or human technological source. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds and demonstrated properties that shouldn't be possible given current understanding of radio wave propagation and cosmic electromagnetic emissions. Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope recorded a narrowband signal at 1420 MHz that showed intensity variations and frequency characteristics, matching theoretical predictions for artificial communication attempts. The signal's strength was approximately 30 times greater than background noise levels, indicating a power source far exceeding natural cosmic radio emissions from known astronomical objects. The transmission's duration and intensity pattern suggested intelligent origin rather than natural cosmic phenomenon. Natural radio sources produce continuous emissions or random fluctuations, while the WOW signal demonstrated structured characteristics that implied purposeful transmission designed to attract attention. Fed hydrogen emission lines that would precise frequency selection matched be universally recognizable to technologically advanced civilizations. Most impossibly, the signal originated from a region of space containing no known stars, galaxies, or other astronomical objects capable of generating radio emissions of the detected intensity. Subsequent observations using more powerful telescopes have failed to identify any natural radio sources in the signal's origination point, leaving its source completely unexplained through conventional astronomical analysis. The signal has never been detected again despite continuous monitoring of the same sky region using increasingly sophisticated radio astronomy equipment. This single occurrence violates principles governing natural radio emissions, which should be continuous or periodically recurring, rather than appearing once with perfect clarity, then disappearing permanently ishin. The Kentucky Without Trace or Repit meat shower of March 3, 1876, saw chunks of fresh meat fall from clear skies onto a Kentucky farm for several minutes, covering approximately 100 yards with strips of tissue that appeared to be beef or venison. The incident was witnessed by multiple observers and documented by local newspapers, yet no meteorological or biological explanation can account for meat precipitation occurring during clear weather conditions. Mrs. Allen Crouch was making soap in her yard when pieces of meat began falling from cloudless skies, landing around her with sufficient force to indicate they had fallen from considerable altitude. The meat strips ranged from small fragments to pieces several inches long, all appearing fresh and showing no signs of decomposition despite their unexplained aerial journey. Local residents collected samples that were examined by physicians and eventually sent to scientific institutions for analysis. Laboratory examination confirmed the material was genuine muscle tissue from large mammals, showing cellular structure consistent with beef or venison. The tissue samples displayed no evidence of preservation treatments or artificial preparation that would explain their condition. Meteorological records confirm clear weather conditions with no atmospheric disturbances, high-altitude winds, or storm systems that could have transported organic material from distant locations. The complete absence of clouds or wind patterns capable of lifting and carrying substantial organic matter eliminates conventional explanations involving atmospheric transport from slaughterhouses or other meat processing facilities. Various theories proposed waterspout activity, tornado effects, or bird regurgitation, yet none adequately explain the volume of meat that fell, its fresh condition, or the absence of meteorological phenomena necessary to create such effects. The incident remains unexplained through conventional atmospheric science or biological processes that could produce precipitation of organic tissue from clear skies. The Mpembe effect demonstrates that hot water can freeze faster than cold water under specific conditions, violating intuitive understanding of thermodynamics and heat transfer principles. This phenomenon was named after Erasto Mpemba, a Tanzanian student who observed the effect in 1963, yet the underlying mechanism remains unexplained despite decades of scientific investigation and multiple experimental confirmations. These 10 impossibilities prove that history refuses to conform to the logical frameworks we use to understand cause and effect. Each event represents documented reality that contradicts fundamental principles governing technology, physics, human capability, and rational progression. The evidence confirms these occurrences happened exactly as recorded, yet conventional analysis cannot explain how such outcomes were possible, given the limitations that should have prevented them. Perhaps history operates according to rules we haven't discovered, or maybe reality itself is far stranger than our current understanding allows us to comprehend.